Part 1. The Intern. Ethan stared at the email, the words blurring into an indistinct mass. Intern. He hated interns. They were always either annoyingly eager, asking inane questions, or hopelessly incompetent, messing up his coffee orders and filing things in the wrong place. He already felt his shoulders tightening, the familiar knot of anxiety forming in his stomach. This was exactly what he didn't need. His workload was crushing, the deadlines were looming, and his boss, Mr. Davenport, seemed to take a perverse pleasure in making his life miserable. Ethan sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. He was 32, for God's sake, not some grizzled senior partner with the luxury of delegating. He was just trying to survive the cutthroat world of Wall Street, one caffeine-fueled day at a time. And now, he had to babysit some fresh-out-of-college kid who probably thought a bear market was a place where they sold cuddly toys. He glanced at the intern's name, Olivia. Great, he muttered to himself, another Olivia. It felt like every other woman in New York was named Olivia these days. He pictured a tall, blonde girl with perfectly manicured nails and a designer handbag, the type who'd spend more time on Instagram than on her actual work. He groaned inwardly. This was going to be a long 6 months. The following Monday, Ethan arrived at the office early, hoping to get a head start on the mountain of paperwork that awaited him. He was hunched over his desk, already feeling the caffeine withdrawal kicking in, when he heard a timid knock on his door. "Come in," he barked, not bothering to look up. "Hi, Mr. Hayes." The voice was soft, hesitant. Ethan finally lifted his head, expecting to be met with the Olivia he had envisioned. Instead, he found himself staring at a girl with warm brown eyes and a slightly nervous smile. She wasn't conventionally beautiful, but there was something disarmingly genuine about her. She wore a simple blue dress and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail, a few stray strands framing her face. She looked more like the girl next door than a Wall Street intern. "Olivia?" he asked, surprised. "Yes, that's me," she replied, her smile widening slightly. "Olivia Miller. It's nice to meet you." Ethan felt a strange flicker in his chest, something akin to relief? He wasn't sure. He cleared his throat, trying to regain his composure. "Right. Have a seat, Olivia." He gestured towards the chair opposite his desk, his usual gruffness softening slightly. As she sat down, he noticed a book tucked under her arm. It wasn't the latest finance bestseller, but a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice. He found himself intrigued. Maybe this internship wouldn't be so bad after all. Part 2. Finding his voice. The first few weeks of Olivia's internship were a whirlwind. Ethan, despite his initial reservations, found himself pleasantly surprised. Olivia was a quick learner, eager to absorb everything he taught her. She wasn't afraid to ask questions, but they were thoughtful, insightful questions, not the mindless kind that usually made him want to bang his head against his desk. More importantly, she had a knack for breaking through his shell. She'd bring him a cup of coffee in the morning, remembering how he liked it, black, 2 sugars, a detail he hadn't even realized he'd mentioned. She'd leave him little notes on his desk with encouraging messages or funny observations about their coworkers. She even managed to coax a smile out of him on occasion, much to the astonishment of the rest of the office. One afternoon, Ethan was struggling with a particularly complex financial model. He'd been staring at the spreadsheet for hours, the numbers swimming before his eyes. Frustration was mounting, and he was on the verge of giving up when Olivia walked in. "Everything okay, Mr. Hayes?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "Just peachy," he grumbled, rubbing his temples. "This model is a complete mess." Olivia peered at the screen. "Can I take a look?" He hesitated. He wasn't used to sharing his work, especially not with an intern. but something in her earnest expression made him relent. "Sure, go ahead," he said, pushing his chair back. Olivia studied the spreadsheet for a few minutes, her brow furrowed in concentration. Then, she pointed to a line of code. "I think the problem might be here," she said. "Shouldn't this variable be discounted at a higher rate?" Ethan blinked. She was right. He made a careless mistake, something he rarely did. "You're absolutely right, Olivia," he said, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over him. "Thank you." "No problem," she replied with a smile. "Two heads are better than one, right?" He nodded, realizing it was more than just two heads. It was her perspective, her fresh outlook, that had helped him see the solution. He was starting to realize that Olivia wasn't just an intern. She was becoming a valuable colleague, and dare he admit it, a friend. Another time, they were working late on a presentation for a potential client. The office was deserted, the only sound the hum of the air conditioning. Ethan was feeling the pressure, his anxiety creeping in. "You know," Olivia said, breaking the silence, "you're really good at this." He looked up, surprised. "At what?" "At explaining things," she said. "You make even the most complicated financial concepts seem easy to understand." He scoffed. "I doubt that." "I'm serious," she insisted. "You have a way of breaking things down, making them clear and concise. You should be a teacher." He chuckled, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. "Never thought of myself as the teaching type." "Well, you are," she said with a smile. "And you're a good one." Her words, so simple yet so sincere, resonated with him. He'd never been one for compliments, but coming from Olivia, they felt different. They felt real. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan found himself looking forward to coming to work each day. He enjoyed their conversations, their shared lunches, the easy camaraderie they had developed. He even started joining his coworkers for after-work drinks occasionally, something he would never have considered before. Olivia was drawing him out of his shell, showing him that there was more to life than spreadsheets and stock prices. He was starting to feel alive. Part 3. Cracks in the Facade. Ethan was changing. He was more relaxed, more confident, even cracking jokes with his colleagues, though some still looked at him with suspicion, as if he'd been replaced by a pod person. He started going to the gym, got a haircut, and even bought a new suit. He was starting to feel like a different person, a better version of himself, and he knew exactly who to thank for it. Olivia, however, remained blissfully unaware of her impact. She treated him with the same friendly openness she had from day one, never noticing the way his eyes lingered on her a moment too long, or the way his voice softened when he spoke to her. One Friday afternoon, Mr. Davenport called Ethan into his office. Ethan braced himself for the usual barrage of criticism, but instead, Mr. Davenport offered him a promotion, a big one. It meant more money, more responsibility, and a corner office with a view. Ethan should have been thrilled, but as he walked out of Mr. Davenport's office, his mind was racing. The promotion would involve longer hours, more travel, and even less time for Olivia. He found her at her desk, organizing some files. "Olivia," he began, then hesitated. How could he tell her? How could he explain that this promotion, the very thing he'd been working towards for years, suddenly felt like a poisoned chalice? "Mr. Hayes," she looked up, a question in her eyes. "Is something wrong?" He took a deep breath. "I got a promotion," he said, the words feeling heavy in his mouth. "Oh, wow!" she exclaimed, her face breaking into a wide smile. "That's amazing. Congratulations." He managed a weak smile. "Thanks." "What's wrong?" she asked, her smile fading. "You don't seem very happy about it." He sighed. It's a lot more responsibility, more travel." He trailed off, unable to articulate the real reason for his apprehension. Olivia tilted her head, studying him with those perceptive brown eyes. "You don't want it?" she asked softly. He shook his head. "It's not that I don't want it. It's just—" He stopped again, frustrated with his inability to express himself. "It's just what?" she prompted gently. He looked at her, the words catching in his throat. He couldn't say it. He couldn't tell her that the thought of spending less time with her, of potentially losing her altogether, filled him with a dread that overshadowed any career ambition. "It's complicated," he mumbled finally, turning away. Olivia didn't press him. She simply nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. But Ethan knew he'd missed an opportunity, a chance to let her see the real him, the man who was falling for her, slowly but surely. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. He was still the same insecure, tongue-tied guy he'd always been. He'd changed on the outside, but inside, he was still that awkward, lonely man, afraid to take a chance, afraid to let anyone in. And with every passing day, the clock was ticking down on his time with Olivia. Part 4. The Departure Gate. The last day of Olivia's internship arrived, heavy with the weight of unspoken words and unacknowledged feelings. Ethan watched as Olivia packed her belongings, each item a reminder of the laughter and lightness she had brought into his life. He longed to tell her how much she meant to him, but the familiar fear held him back. Olivia lingered at the doorway, her eyes searching his, a silent plea for him to break the suffocating tension. But Ethan remained frozen, trapped in his own insecurity. "Goodbye, Mr. Hayes," she said softly, her voice tinged with disappointment. "It's been really nice working with you." "Goodbye, Olivia," he managed, his voice a mere croak. She turned and walked away, leaving him standing there with the crushing weight of regret. He had let her go. Again. A few days later, Olivia found herself at JFK Airport, her heart heavy as she checked in for her flight to Brussels. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, that something should have happened, something that never did. She pushed her suitcase towards the security checkpoint, her thoughts a whirlwind of what-ifs and might-have-beens. As she placed her bag on the conveyor belt, she heard a familiar voice call her name. "Olivia." She froze, her heart leaping into her throat. She turned slowly, her eyes widening in disbelief. There, standing just beyond the security line, was Ethan, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Ethan," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "What are you doing here?" He walked towards her, a determined look in his eyes and a soft smile playing on his lips. "I realized something, Olivia," he said, his voice filled with a newfound confidence. "I realized I'm tired of letting fear control me. I'm tired of missing out on life. And I'm definitely tired of missing out on you." He reached for her hand, his touch sending shivers down her spine. "So," he continued, his voice husky with emotion, "I came to tell you that I'm crazy about you." Olivia's eyes filled with tears of joy. "You are?" He nodded, his gaze unwavering. "I am, and I was hoping. Maybe you felt something too?" She laughed, a joyous, relieved sound. "Something?" she repeated. "Ethan, He didn't give her a chance to finish. He leaned in and kissed her, a kiss that was both a question and an answer, a promise of a future together. When they finally broke apart, Olivia was beaming. "So," she asked, her eyes sparkling, "what are you curious about first? Brussels or the people?" He grinned, pulling her closer. "Definitely the people," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Especially one person in particular." They walked hand in hand towards the gate, their laughter echoing through the terminal. Ethan had finally taken a leap of faith, and he had landed in the arms of the woman who had shown him how to truly live. Their journey was just beginning, And for the first time in a long time, Ethan felt a sense of hope and excitement for the future. He had a feeling that with Olivia by his side, anything was possible.